recovery breaks down where authority bottlenecks.
Hey, welcome to the Church Staff Book Club. My name is Jonathan Malm.
I'm Jason Young.
And we are learning together. That's the goal of this podcast. So many leaders we've talked to, Jason, we were just talking about this before we started recording, that they learn alone, but they find that whenever they learn in a group, when they learn with someone, whenever they're reading a book together with someone, the learning is exponentially greater. So that's our hope. We'll go through a book chapter by chapter. Each episode is a chapter. And whether you've read the book, whether you haven't read the book, you will get something from this podcast. This first round is The Comeback Effect, which is the book that we wrote, conveniently. That would be a great way to start the podcast with something we're super familiar with. We won't always be doing a book that we wrote, but this book is all about hospitality at your church. How do you make people feel welcome, at home, comfortable, whatever you want to call it, whatever the goal of hospitality at your church is? That's what this dives into, really kind of the nuts and bolts of working with a hospitality team as a hospitality leader, even beyond that. And so we'll talk about chapter 6, which is recovering quickly today, but hope that there's a lot of really good stuff in this podcast. So Jason, recover quickly. You open up the book with a really good story, this chapter rather. Tell that story, or tell a story that talks about, kind of illustrates this idea of recovering.
Yeah. When I think about recovering in hospitality, I think about it this way, that great hospitality isn't about avoiding mistakes, even though we'd all like everything to be just right, but it's how you respond when they happen. So
understanding that things will go wrong.
100%. And if you think they won't, then I don't know what to say, because it's going to happen. And so, I mean, there's a story in the book. I think about like some basic stories. Let me just give some examples. Instead of repeating the story, you could read it. Let me just think about some mistakes or some challenges that you watching, you listening, have experienced, and I have as well. Think about when a family, single parent goes to check in their child and, kids ministry, children's ministry, student ministry, whatever it is, and the tag gets lost. It's the wrong room. There's a line to check in, okay, it's not going well. The machine.
This happens at my church. The room is full and we're at capacity,
yes.
And you're like, we're sorry. Like, you were expecting
100%.
to drop off the kid, you can't.
Yeah, we didn't have enough volunteers, so we had to actually close the rooms.
Yeah.
So you've got these things. There's seating issues. Could be guests arrive late. They already feel awkward, and they're late because their kid had a meltdown. They're late because, they just got up late, right? They're late because the Dunkin' or coffee store line was longer than they anticipated. They're late. And when they're late, seating's full. Yeah. Or it's in a seat that's less desirable. And it's not even necessary.
Sit with their friend that they were counting on sitting with, or their family member, or
We just had this in our church. A family of 5 came in, and the max number of seats together, 3. So, what do you do? Let me give you another very simple one. Probably happens all the time. A coffee spill. Yeah. And you're like, we even say put a lid on it. But there's a coffee spill right in the middle. When the music, what do you do? It's so right. We have these different examples, and we could go on and on. Parking lot to, all these issues. The question is this: it's not if, it's when, right? So a cliche. Yeah. But what I know we're going to talk about in this episode is when someone owns the mistake, even if it's not yours, and they do it with warmth, they do it with honor. What's interesting is you get more loyalty, not less. And so thinking about the idea that great hospitality isn't about avoiding mistakes. It's about how they respond when they happen. So let me ask you a question, Jonathan. Why, and maybe this is a little bit of an assumption, and if it is, my bad, you call me out.
Yeah.
But why do you think churches are often great at planning for excellence, but not so great at planning for failure?
Yeah, because Sunday is 1 hour, and we're spending all week leading up to that 1 hour. And we think we have all of our T's crossed and I's dotted, right? Like we're That's the thing. We just want to provide excellent service. I feel like, so I have an Airbnb, and I feel like I did everything to set it up, right? Like we spent so much money on designers, interior designers. We bought really nice stuff, but like the other day, someone had their front windshield broken in the front, like of the property, right? It was not in any way my fault. It was not like the neighborhood's not an unsafe neighborhood. Who knows why that happened, right? I didn't have a camera though, and so I couldn't like see what happened. And so I had to own it though. I'm like, I'm so sorry. That should not have happened on my property. Is it my fault? Of course it's not my fault. Like that can happen anywhere, right? Like could have happened at a Walmart, and like I don't know what happened because I don't have a camera. I bought a camera since then, right? But the reality is like I can plan and create as great of an experience as possible, but the reality is people are involved. Especially in our church services, right? Like mine's largely like the property, it's like a space, but like there are people in the neighborhood, there are people that maybe they cut off in traffic and they followed them home. Like we don't know what happened, right? But the reality is people are involved, people make mistakes. And I think we forget that people component, which is so weird because like church, we're in the people business, right? Like if you want to call it, it's not a business, right? But that's what we do as people, right? We hopefully disciple people, we grow people, we encourage people, but I think there's this symptom of, and I'm not dogging on mega churches, but like this mega church mentality of like, we are creating a production. It is bled into most churches where we're like, we're creating a service. We're creating a roster on the planning center, a schedule on the planning center. And that's what we're focused on. And we forget the fact that like, no, this is like a give and take of people coming, people going, people walking in. So I think that's largely why. And I think to clarify, because you talked about spilling coffee, like that's not necessarily something we need to recover. The reason we would recover from that is that they feel embarrassed.
Yes.
Like maybe the floor was sloped or whatever. So like that is our thing, but like that's not necessarily like something's going to play. But it's like what systems, either good or bad systems, are getting in the way of people feeling safe. That's the big thing, right? Like they feel safe. Yes. So if I can't sit with my family member, I don't feel safe, or I feel wronged, or I feel like you wronged me in some way, right? I think that's the big thing is like, how can we avoid making people feel wronged, but people still will feel wronged? So then how do we recover from that situation where people feel wronged? Do you feel like that's encapsulates kind of what we're talking about here?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad that you unpacked that. Yeah, the coffee spill isn't necessarily ours to own, but man, how we can come
I'm starting to hate on your example.
No. Look, it's good because really when we think about it, what you're highlighting is when we think about mistakes, we're really not talking about something that like necessarily happened. It's how I feel based on how, something happens. Because look, mistakes are inevitable. Here's what's interesting. Mistakes are inevitable. Recovery is optional.
Yeah.
And so when we think about the recovery side of things, I have discovered, and if you're watching, listening, I mean, Jonathan, you may even disagree with this, I don't know. But I don't think mistakes ruin guest experiences. I think our silence to them or lack of response does.
Yeah.
And so it's what can we do when, something happens, maybe there's the wrong message on the website or social media, and they show up. I've seen this happen. Service time changed because it was a holiday and we didn't post it or communicate it, and they show up, or they assume, church is at 11, but our service is at 10:30, and now they feel embarrassed because they've shown up 30 minutes late. I have seen that I worked at this one particular church that happened all the time. The standard church service, right? And so I think it's how do we, and maybe this is what we could talk about. It's how do we prepare our teams, which are largely made up of volunteers, how do we prepare them for when these moments of recovery happen? Yeah,
I think the big thing is, we'll talk about this in, I think it's the next chapter, or maybe the chapter after, the idea of like leading with values over policy, right? Like that's a big deal. But I think we need to arm people with autonomy and to think through what you're about to do. How does this make you feel? So I was visiting with this church yesterday, and the person was asking me, because I'd visited, he's like, have you ever seen someone like come and and like tell a parent to like take their kid to the family room, right? Like, because their kid's making noise. And I'm like, I haven't seen that at this church. At my church, I have seen that, right? We don't have a family room too, which is another problem, right? But that moment is such an awkward experience. Like, okay, imagine an usher on their first Sunday. They're having to say like, hey, can you go tell that family to like go quiet their kid, right? Such an awkward experience. How does that usher do that? If you haven't trained them properly, the usher's going to say, hey, my leader told me to tell you to go take your kid to the room, right? Like that is such an awkward experience. The usher feels awkward, the family feels awkward, and now suddenly you've created a moment of having to recover. I remember I was a few weeks ago at my church, it was a Christmas service, and there was a family that sat behind us. Obviously they were guests, right? Like they maybe weren't used to coming to church, and their child was being loud, like really loud, not like, crying a little bit. It was like a 2-year-old and just like really, really loud. It went on for about 20 minutes, and then someone came and asked them to like, I don't know what they asked them, but like the whole family left. And I'm like, oh gosh, what a horrible thing, right? Like that's one of those things where like, so how can you arm an usher to say, okay, our policy is to maybe limit distractions in the church, right? Like that's what we're trying to accomplish. But like, how can you create a wow moment? And I think you kind of alluded to this, and I think we alluded to this in the book, but the idea that like, if you're Disney, your wow moments are because, you have a great production. You have, if you're a church with a lot of resources, your wow moment is like, wow, that vocalist was insanely good, right? Like that's a wow moment. For most churches though, the wow moment happens in those bad experiences, in those no's, in those recoveries. So what could an usher do? They could have said, hey, we're so sorry. I know you're probably not being able to enjoy the service. And like, could we help you find a place that you could enjoy the service with your kids a little bit better? And then have a TV. They do have a TV set up in the lobby, and just say, hey, we wanted to get you some snacks for your kids, or bring a coloring packet. We talk about that, I think, in the book. Bring a coloring packet for the kid to at least give them something to distract them with, right? Like, but we create tools, and we create flexibility, and we create autonomy to be able to make moments for this.
Yeah, I was listening to you, and I had a very vivid illustration pop up when other team members make mistakes. It happens. I worked at a church that there was a standing rule. We're multi-campus, and when the senior pastor was in the room live with us, and we were broadcasting from that particular location, rules shifted a little bit. Whereas if it was just, kind of broadcasted into us, they were lightened just a little bit, specifically around crying babies.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine senior pastors live in the room. The moment that a child makes a noise, there was an expectation that you go touch base, no matter where that person was in the auditorium, with that parent or that grandparent or whoever was with the child. And it was awkward, because really what we're asking them to do is to step into the lobby, because we're broadcasting so the other campuses pick it up, and it distracts the senior pastor. Yeah. Some people say, well, he just needs to get over it. Oh, you can absolutely feel that way.
Yeah, we were not making a judgment statement on this, but depending on what you need, what you feel like you need, this is just a reality, right?
Yeah. And sometimes, most of the time, it went well. I laugh because this one parent, their child was very loud, and the parent was playing with rattling toys. So you got crying, rattling toys. Again, like you and I are both parents of multiple kids. Like
very parent. I'm in the thick of it. I'm that parent that's trying to distract my child.
Yeah, and so like there's no blaming. Like we get it. We're also trying to solve create a solution to something. Anyways, this parent goes into the lobby. She gets in my face while holding the child, and just, up one side the wall, down the other, posted this really nasty message about me online. He calls me out by name and yada, yada, yada. I thought that we recovered the best that we could. I will just say this, you're not going to win them all.
Yeah.
And there are some moments they're going to end up like that moment with me, publicly on social media, called out by name, I responded graciously. And again, it is what it is. That will probably be the anomalies.
Yeah.
But remember this. I tell that story to highlight this. Recovery is an emotional skill, not a technical one. And because what that person is feeling, what the guest is feeling, is emotional.
Yeah.
Therefore, a technical solution doesn't fix an emotional, problem or vibe, or they feel embarrassed or disappointed or whatever it is. So I say that to say this. Guests don't want an explanation first. They want empathy.
Yeah.
But our tendency is to explain.
Yeah, I think maybe we talked about this in preparation for this call last week, but the idea that, in a lot of businesses, like the customer is always right? We talked about that.
Yes.
But the customer is not always right. But perhaps what we could say is the customer is not always right, but their feelings are right.
Yeah, that's fair.
Not to say that they should feel that way, but there is a justification for that feeling. And I think we can sometimes address the feeling, say, I'm sorry, we cannot budge on this policy because of whatever reason. But man, I understand that's a horrible feeling. And so maybe the way that we talk about this is, and you kind of alluded to this, is more, instead of fixing the situation, you fix the feelings. Yeah. So we can't do this, and we talk about that in the book. So one example you said is we don't have coffee. We don't serve coffee in our church in whatever that environment was that you're working. You said, but one volunteer said, hey, we don't have coffee, we don't have a coffee shop, but we do have some for our volunteers, so let me sneak you some, right? Like that's a wow moment where it's like the policy is we don't have coffee for people, but I can figure out something to make it happen, right? Like that's an example of recovering from something like, it was a subtle disappointment. It was like a bummer, like, I didn't get my coffee this morning. For some people, that's a big deal, right? This person then decided like, okay, well, there's a way I can make this happen. I don't need to change the whole policy. I don't need to change the whole situation in our church, but I can figure out a way to give. So the customer is not always right. You should have a coffee shop. No, maybe you shouldn't have a coffee shop, but their feelings are. And so let's figure out a way to fix that.
Yeah. And what you just said exemplifies that empowered people, so empowered volunteer, helps to make recovery better, right? So, and what's interesting is recovery breaks down where authority bottlenecks.
Let me unpack that. Recovery breaks down where authority. So the authority now all goes to one person. Everyone has to check with this one person. And that's where the recovery breaks down because that one person is not available or it takes 10 minutes to get to that person. So now I can't recover because I have to check with this person first. It's kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah. It's kind of that. It's kind of have you ever gone to like a restaurant or a big box store or anywhere and something happens and you hear this, well, let me get someone. Yeah. Let me check with my manager. And really what you're saying is you're making a weak statement versus a strong statement that would be, I got this. I got you. Kind of like the coffee illustration. If you were to come in, because I know you drink coffee, I don't. If you were thinking, well, most churches drink coffee, you're a guest in church, and you're like, hey, where might I find coffee? I could even like make it a joke to go from service recovery to like a surprise and delight moment. It's like, believe it or not, we don't have any coffee in the building available for everybody. And I know it's like surprising because coffee's like, fuel for
what you expect at a church, right? Yeah,
that's right. It's fuel for your day. However, we actually do have some coffee in the building. So come on, I got your back. So I'm going to solve it. I'm going to move it into a surprise and delight moment. And not only that, because I remember doing this exact example many, many times while we're in there about coffee. Let's say they have a kid or two or a student, or maybe not. They just have a spouse. We also have snacks in there and food. I'm like, hey, while we're in here, did you get breakfast? Yeah. Or, hey, while we're in here, you want it? We got some granola bars, crackers. Like, you want anything? And so it's taken a moment. Again, we didn't necessarily make a mistake, but is a softball moment for us that our empowered people, our empowered volunteers, make the recovery better. And it's not only did you do this, you did this plus this. So
Yeah.
reducing the authority bottleneck. Somebody's got to check with you, or we've got all these policies. And again, if they're some around like kids and safety, that's one thing. But most of the time I find, it's not. Here's a silly example. This would be something I would tell our volunteers to do. I know this is like out of policy. In our parking areas, you've got the white stripe that signify don't park here.
Yeah.
Right. And it's don't park here for particular reasons. But on more than one occasion, not only did I do this, but our parking team did this, and I would tell them to do this. If somebody comes in at the last minute and there are no spots, that is an optional spot, assuming the vehicle fits there, right? If it fits a compact car and not some dually, park them there, but make sure that someone's there to help them get out after. It's kind of one of those moments that when they come in, you park them there, and they're gonna like think, well, I'm not supposed to park here. It's striped off. But you've empowered the team member to make that decision. I got you, and when you're out, when you're done, I'm gonna help you get out, so they don't have to worry like, well, like, what am I supposed to do? I'm not supposed to like park here. It's like, hey, I got your back. But we've empowered the volunteer, to make those particular decisions, and it turns into, a surprise and delight moment.
And the way we empower people is by the one time that happens, you as a volunteer leader say, good job breaking policy. That was the right thing to do. Yeah. But it's hard to do that so a volunteer feels like I'm going to get in trouble. And we talked about this in a previous episode. I'm going to get in trouble from my volunteer leader, so I can't do it. But then the volunteer leader probably feels the same way. I'm going to get in trouble from my leader if I do this, so I can't empower my team to do this, right? Like there's this domino effect of fear that can happen whenever something happens outside of the policy and you get in trouble for it. So as the head pastor, if someone breaks a policy, you need to celebrate that if it's the right reason, right? Like there's always a reason for breaking the policy. If the reason is right, you celebrate that. And I would say that needs to start from there, and it dominoes down to then the volunteer be able to be empowered. That's I think where that breakdown happens so much is like if one person in the chain is like agitated that their policy was broken, there's no empowerment. You've broken the possibility for empowering your volunteers.
Yeah. Okay, so in light of that, let me ask you this question. So let's say a volunteer messes up, because I guarantee you somebody watching, listening to this is probably wondering the same thing. If a volunteer messes up, what can be the best immediate response from a leader?
I mean, giving them the solution of what would have worked instead. I think, this is a big Dale Carnegie thing from How to Win Friends and Influence People, but you show that the mistake is easy to solve, right? Easy to fix. If you just criticize the mistake, it doesn't really help anyone. So what you say is, oh my gosh, I see why you did it. I do this with my son all the time. Like he's bringing my daughter, he puts a blanket on my baby daughter's face. And I'm like, wow, that's so sweet of you to do that. You're going to suffocate the baby. But like, I say, wow, I see your heart in that. That was really good. We don't want to do that because that can keep her from breathing, but you did a really good job there. Maybe what you do is you put it on her feet instead. So I acknowledge their good intentions. I acknowledge their heart behind it. I say, there's a reason that we can't do that because of this. And it's not, you didn't know that. Don't need to assume you knew that. But then I help them in the future. If you feel like you need to do that, this is the way you can do that. So I'd say that would be the solution to doing that. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity for you to model what you want them to mimic. And because they're gonna, some of this stuff is caught and other stuff is taught, right? And so the caught in this moment is, what does my face communicate? Does it communicate judgment, disappointment?
Yeah.
Does it communicate like, oh, bummer? And look, it's okay. It's an opportunity for them to learn, because I think about these conversations that we address whatever it is, and it's an equipping moment because they're probably going to be in a very similar situation in the future. And in essence, they're probably going to talk about how you responded to other volunteers on the team, or if it's a public thing, people are watching, how you respond. And I feel like, maybe I'm wrong, I feel like in these types of moments is really where your leadership is demonstrated.
Hey, wanted to take a few seconds to shout out our sponsor of the Church Staff Book Club. Church hospitality, guest care, first impressions. These are questions we've all heard when it comes to church, but sometimes through the grind of daily tasks and prepping for Sunday every week, we lose the heart of hospitality. Guest care becomes a checklist rather than a discipleship effort. First Impressions is an organization committed to helping churches create meaningful connections with guests, from the very first visit to lifelong discipleships. Whether you're looking to sharpen your team skills, build a proven follow-up plan, or take your guest experience to the next level, they've got you covered. Through First Impressions Online Conference, Live Conference, Academy, and Executive Coaching, they equip churches with strategies, systems, and support you need to invite, welcome, and connect with your church guests. You can learn more at firstimpressions.church. But we'll get back into the conversation.
There's a tension of, well, they're volunteers. They're not paid.
Yeah.
And so we feel like there's extra, grace. And I think we do give grace. At the same time, it's an opportunity that, and we'll talk about this in a future episode, where we have values, and we can use our values when we onboard. We can use our values when we coach. We can use our values in situations, like this, that can guide the conversation. So it's not Jason necessarily talking to Jonathan. It's Jason and Jonathan talking about the value of, whatever, excellence or having fun or flexibility, whatever it is. So I think more than the technicality of the conversation, you are modeling what you want them to mimic. And I think that is really important. So if we're saying if we're telling the volunteer to the guest, explanation is not as great as empathy in the moment. Well, guess what? You better demonstrate an explanation to the volunteer is not as great as empathy to the volunteer in the moment. So it's modeling that, that very, very thing. So here's a tension. You said something a second ago that made me think about this. I talked to a lot of connection pastors, guest experience, people in similar roles. And by the way, if you're listening and watching this and you're like, well, that's not technically my title, this is still for you, because if you're in children's ministry, student ministry, small group ministry, an executive pastor, regardless of your role, we all engage volunteers on some level, and we're all we're affecting people in a way that we want them to come back. So you don't have to have it in your title, right? So in thinking about this, here's a tension I often find in recovery. We can't script everything. We do have to have a plan, right? And so the plan might feel more of the scripting, like this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, kind of the training part. So how do you navigate the tension between holding, script and I think a 6'7" in this moment, but oh, my son would kill me. He's like, Dad, terrible example, but sorry, that was popped in my head. I don't even know if I should say it on podcast, but there you go. But when I think about you got to have the script, and so it's like, this is how we do what we do, because we want to have repeatable moments, right? So consistency. But how do you navigate that with the unscripted moments? So in the moments of recovery, how can you be excellent in both of those? It's something that I often hear and think about. What do you think?
I think it just comes down to celebrating when someone goes off script. Like the principle of focus is you veer toward where you're focusing, and people veer toward praise. So whenever you praise someone for saying, "Hey, we didn't plan for this, and I saw what you did, and you did so well. And everyone, did you see what he did? That was incredible." What that cues in everyone's mind is, I'm going to get praised when I have to go off script and I handle it with creativity. They're just imagining. I mean, it's, I tell bedtime stories to my 4-year-old son at night, and I always make him the hero because he wants to imagine himself being the hero. And whatever it takes to become the hero, he wants to do that, right? That's the reality for people. We all want to imagine ourselves as the hero. So whenever you show someone what a hero is, and then you give them a chance to say, hey, you're empowered to be a hero whenever your time arises, people are going to step up for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's my take. I think it is just we have to praise. I think so often we focus on correcting. But often you don't even have to correct if you just praise the right things. Whenever you're talking to adults, whenever you're talking to volunteers who signed up for this, they signed their name wanting to give their time to this and want to feel used by God and want to feel useful to their church. They're looking for ways to be the hero. So you just got to praise the right things to give them that chance.
I love that, Jonathan. I love that. You're highlighting, as a leader, what's important is, what are we looking for? Are we looking for the thing that needs to be corrected and fixed? Or are we looking for where it is going well? Calling that out to everybody. I want to celebrate the fact, y'all got to tell you the story about what Jonathan did. Because again, that's the caught and taught, thing. And when I think about the guests coming into our churches, and we think we want them to come back, and the volunteers who, in essence, deliver this experience, I think we want perfection, but what's interesting is what builds trust is consistency. And what is equal to that, if not greater than that, is that ownership of a mistake can build trust faster than the perfection or the consistent good experience, right? And so it can build and rebuild trust, because guests are going to remember how you made them feel after the mistake. They rarely remember the mistake, but they're going to celebrate and share what you did. And so it's paying attention to what you're looking at. It's preparing, thinking about the emotional elements of these types of moments and being able to respond emotionally to them, recognizing, like, somebody forgets something in a fast food bag. Some quick service restaurants are going to, you feel like you got to be a lawyer to explain your case to get what they left. Whereas other quick service restaurants, you're going to walk in and you're already frustrated. And it's like, you know what? That's our fault. We left it out. So sorry. Not only do I give you this, but I give you this. I don't have to explain. I don't have to defend. It's like done. And guess what? I'm telling that story. You're not even going to believe what they did. Oh, wait, how did you get that? We only ordered that. And so, again, we're not talking about a technical conversation. There's an emotional aspect in creating these experiences. And it's no different when you're talking about recovery. Yeah.
So hey, we hope this was helpful for you. Next week, we'll be talking chapter 7, but leave a comment on YouTube, wherever you're watching. Find us on social media, ask us questions. We're happy to be as helpful as possible, but we hope you got a lot from this episode this week.